joining us for this screening of Netflix's Train Dreams and for this Q&A with the folks who made it happen. I'm Jared Hall, editorial director at Entertainment Weekly and our awards editor. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the folks who brought this really beautiful story to life, starting with producers Michael Heimler, Ashley Schaefer, Will Janowitz, Teddy Schwartzman, then we've got Marissa McGann, now star Joel Edgerton, and co-writer and director Clint Bentley. Welcome everyone, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
I remember seeing this film at Sundance this year because, we see a lot of films at Sundance, and it's a lot of back to back to back, and things can kind of start to blur together, and this was such a singular experience, and I remember telling people after, like, this is a movie I'm going to continue to think about through the year, and we're going to be talking about this movie again at the end of the year, and here we are. I'm so glad that is the case, so congratulations on it.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah. Sorry. Thanks for calling. Yeah, I got up that crystal ball, trying to do that. I'm so curious, where did the entire journey for this start? Like, who first discovered Dennis Johnson's 2011 novella and really kickstarted the journey for bringing this thing to life?
Marissa.
Well, I had actually read the short story in the Paris Review way back, I think in like 2000 or 2001. And it was a story that after I put it down, like I couldn't shake. And this like predates saving it on your phone or saving it on the internet, and it just was like on paper, and it just like went into the ether. And when it came back around and was republished in like 2012, it was like rediscovering an old friend. Like it felt like a story that was like coming back to haunt me. It was a story that kind of never left me. And when it came out in 2011, I think that it was described as an epic in miniature, and I loved that so much. I've always loved epic storytelling in film. My favorite films are films from like the 1970s, big, expansive stories, very intimate at the same time. And I was really excited by the idea of telling a story that felt both epic and expansive, but also about a very simple life. Usually you see these epic films and they're about big events, people going through very extraordinary things, and I was just really taken by this notion of examining a life that feels ordinary but also very extraordinary in its simplicity. And then personally, it felt like Robert Grenier's life felt like the life of people I knew really well, people like my grandfather and my great-grandfather who I knew and who were laborers and worked with their hands and who history will forget. There's no monuments made to them. And it was a chance to really honor men and women like that.
So. People who are really the backbone of this country. Yeah. So then from there, Marissa, Ashley, Will, your company, then what was the journey like from that point for, trying to secure the funding and the rights to this novella?
Every film has its own journey, and we all work together, building the script, finding the right filmmaker, and it really was, I would say this film, there were a lot of moments of kismet. And so it was the middle of the pandemic where things felt really dire for the film industry, and watching Clint's film Jockey, it just felt like after we had met with and talked to so many filmmakers, we had finally found the right person to tell the story. And that's when it really started to take shape. And so we worked with Clint and Greg together on the script, and they wrote the most gorgeous, beautiful script, and it was, it's really delicate material. It's not this obvious adaptation, and so that took a little bit of time, but we really, really nailed it. And then we found Joel, and then Blackbear came on, Teddy and Mike, and then it was, then the train was running.
So, sorry, am I reading between the lines? Was it just kind of sitting there stagnant for a few years though? Was it not moving?
Not stagnant. I think I think finding the right filmmaker was so important for this, and that we had talked to different filmmakers, but they weren't. When you read Dennis Johnson, it's very particular, and finding someone who can capture that. It's not every filmmaker, and I think that, we found Clint, and that point.
Yeah.
It became so undeniable.
Yeah. Well, Clint, do you remember that first conversation when it came your way?
Yes, I do. It was, I had been a fan of Dennis Johnson's for a long, long time, but hadn't, especially with this book, hadn't thought about it as a movie. And also, I said this before, but I didn't know if I would have had the courage to do it had they not been like trying to make it for a while. And when we had those first conversations and started talking about like the shape it could take as a movie and all of that, I just remember like we were all very creatively aligned, and they like were not only very like thoughtful and exactly what Marissa and Ashley had just said here were the things they were saying then, and that was like I remember we had a discussion early on, and I think my only concern with it was that they would, sometimes you see these people they say they want to make a book into a movie, right? It's a really interesting book, and really difficult, but then like they want to make something very straightforward. It's not like as interesting as the book. And I remember we had talked about that at the time, and I was like, do you guys act like, and I was trying to just like suss it out, and they loved the book and wanted to make something super interesting, and then we were just all aligned there, and so it was easy to kind of like take that journey then in terms of getting into the script and
How did the material speak to your sensibilities, the things that you like as a storyteller?
There's so much there that like spoke to me as a storyteller and what I feel as a person, and I grew up on a ranching family. I grew up in the forests, and my uncle was a logger, and so I like, and what Marissa was just saying in terms of about like, making something for like kind of a monument to those forgotten people, like my father, my grandfather, my mother, like that really struck me about it. And then also what Marissa was saying about the types of movies that she's referencing there, it was the same for me. And it just felt like, I think the thing, there was a lot that I loved about the book, not least of which was like this main character's journey and wanting to put that character on screen. But there was just so much, there was poeticism to the book, there was magical realism, there was like a love story, there was death, there was all these, it just felt like a fertile playground where it's very rare where you have something that you can do so many different things and it doesn't feel schizophrenic.
Kind of cinematic on its own.
Yeah, 100%.
Ashley mentioned seeing Jockey. Will, could you expand a bit more on what you guys saw in that you knew made Clint the right person for this?
Sure. What is this on?
Yeah. I think it's got to be right in front of your face.
Yeah. Is that how this works?
There you go.
Jockey was stunning in its own right. That film kind of blew me away. It Ashley showed it, met them, and were you there, or you saw it? Was it remote at that point? Yeah. Right.
Watched it during Sundance.
Right. And it just, it's just an incredibly intimate story, but Clint has an incredible relationship with the cinematographer Adolfo, and it was very important to Clint that it be Adolfo, and I think we all recognize that. I was taken by Jockey and then another film that Adolfo did called Mosquito, which is sort of a miniature epic as well, and so it was very much in the milieu of like what we were trying to do. But I think Teddy and Mike having and all of us together, the foresight to be like, well, if we blow this up a little more, there could be something very special there. So it sort of all coalesced that way.
Yeah. Well, Teddy and Michael, you previously worked with Clint and his co-writer Greg Hudar on the Oscar-nominated, incredible, I loved it so much, Sing Sing. Why did you guys, Black Bear, why did you want to be part of this?
Mike, why don't you go first?
I mean, I think when Clint and Greg decided to give us the script for Train Dreams, we were towards the end of post-production on Sing Sing, and it was honestly the most incredible filmmaking experience that I think the two of us have been a part of. It was just an incredible collaboration. Clint and Greg are great friends, great people, and true artists. And I think at that point, at least I would have just dropped whatever I was doing to read whatever they were willing to give me. And when we read Train Dreams, it just blew us away emotionally. And although on paper, not an obvious story to tell, just one that I think, knowing what Clint would bring from a directing standpoint, and what all of the roles that were written on the page that were so clear to see, I think we just wanted to be a part of it, bringing it to life. We saw the potential in it, and wanted to do whatever we could to give everyone here the resources, the support, the infrastructure, to allow Clint to bring this to life in a masterful way.
Yeah. Well, and then of course, casting becomes the other big component, important for any film, and I'm going to guess that was no different here.
That's me.
Yes, for you.
Yeah, look, I think that there's all producers in the audience here, and we know how hard it is to get movies made and what elements you look for, and they are usually not period early 19th century logging, right? So I think it's a testament to Clint and Greg, that they were able to develop something that you just felt so much on each page, and really on the producing side, like a real testament to Marissa and Kamala that they were willing to option this material and sink money into developing a script on this subject, which Black Bear would have been way too scared to do. But I think the fact that we had that great relationship with Clint and with Greg, and then saw it on the page, it was, okay, how do we will this into existence? And there's only one way to do that, which is sort of piece by piece. And the most important piece, outside of just an incredible director who you believe in, is an actor who you can lose yourself in. And Robert is a very internal character that you've obviously all just witnessed. And you need an actor who can be selfless, emotive, powerful, raw, vulnerable, and willing to trust their director, really, that you're going to feel so much in just the individual nuance of that performance. And I don't think you can find an actor capable of doing so much with such subtlety as Joel Edgerton. And we've just been blown away by so many of his performances. I think people point back to performances like Loving and say, well, look at the nuance, but I really don't think any of us quite knew what Joel was going to be able to bring to Robert until we were there, and until we saw it on screen. And and to do that with someone who is also a wonderful human being and was able to dive in on a production like this that was well under $10 million and say, I don't need my trailer, I don't need any creature comforts, I'm willing to move my whole family to the woods of Washington State and just roll up my sleeves and dive in. Like most, it's not about the perk package. It's about caring, about bringing this story to life. And Joel was just a true partner every step of the way.
Well, so that leads me to quite quickly. I was going to get into some of that and some of that stuff, but first I have to ask you, is it true you received this novella as a rap gift many years ago?
Yeah. On the tail end of making Boy Raised, I was given the novella as a gift, and I realized often when people give you a book, as opposed to walking to a bookstore and trying to choose amongst the overwhelming amount of things on the shelves, it means something when someone you know and care about is giving you the book. And I figured there was a purpose to it. I read it immediately, and I actually then inquired after the rights to the novella, and thankfully they were taken, because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here in this scenario. I don't think I could have quite, as a filmmaker, if I was going to adapt it, done as quite as good a job as Clint by any stretch. And now I get to sit here having experienced the journey simply as an actor, which was the perfect timing for me for this character. So yeah, I'm really glad that I read the novella, that I was already filled up with love for it, but that the rights were taken by these wonderful people who played this guy.
Yeah, that's real fate.
Yeah.
This role is yours. So then, when I don't know, your team calls, sends you an email with the script, and you're like, wait a minute,
Yeah, how did they know?
right?
As in, is it in the ether? Yeah.
Yeah. Did they know that you were looking for this, or was it truly coincidence that it came?
No,
around to
it
you?
was coincidence. But then, you know, often you look at serendipitous or coincidental things, and you realise there's hallmarks and reasons why. And I think for the same reason maybe I was drawn and had an affinity with Robert as a character. Other people may have seen that in me too. And thankfully Clint was the one that did. And you know, I have to say, it's fascinating. You know, I know a lot of times we do Q&As, and a lot of focus is on people like me as actors. It's really interesting, and I've dipped my toe into the world of producing. It's really fascinating. I feel like all actors should get a video of these kind of conversations to understand not just how much goes into pre-production before they arrive on a set, but how much goes by well before even pre-production in terms of the pickup sticks and the careful decisions that go into marrying material with creative people and finding the right wisdom to reach out to certain people, because that's where some of the unknown magic happens, because it's the union that is excellent and can only be the seed that grows into the thing that becomes special. So it's kind of cool even to hear about some of the things I didn't even know about before I came on board the project.
Yeah. Well, and this film was at Scad Savannah Film Festival last week, and some of us were at a dinner there, and we spoke very briefly.
So you're going to say we owed some money? We up the tab.
Yeah, but you and I spoke very briefly about. I was saying that I feel like a movie like this, it's very risky because of what you were talking about. That so much of this is he doesn't speak for long portions of the movie, but you're still so captivated. I cared so much. I wanted to know what was going to happen, and in less skilled hands, people behind the scenes, this movie could have really failed. And it did not. So that's why I'm telling you congratulations on it, because I hook, line, sinker, I was in and I wanted to know where this was going to go. But from your perspective, because of everything that you had to do, a lot was riding on you in those terms. What was that acting experience like?
Really extraordinary. I mean, I felt my life and a character to me couldn't have been more of a kind of a shadow of myself at the moment. I've always looked for playing dress-ups, and I love that, and I love trying to make people believe that I'm people that I'm definitely not. And I've always been a little bit timid about trusting my own feelings and my own honesty on screen. But I'm a father, and I have two little kids who are toddlers still. I mean, they're 4 now, but they were toddlers when we made the movie. And I have memories of before they came along that really still live inside of me, that I realised coming to work on this. I now understood after having 30 children in movies without ever being a dad. And now that I'm a husband, I'm like, now I get to finally wear that skin, knowing what my experience with that stuff is. I know there's 100 million different kinds of fathers out there. So, but knowing that instead of like, could I feel these things about loss, and how would I be able to reach for those things in my imagination? Those things are inside of me, and the fear was just like, how do I make sure that as Robert, I keep a lid on those things, because this is really a tribute in many ways to men who, sadly or for whatever reason, feel they can't express themselves. So I just felt like my life had found the right moment to play a character like this, and therefore it was more personal than anything I've ever endeavoured. And therefore, if I was honest and the camera was there filming me, that it would feel it had the right integrity for each moment. And I trusted him so much. And Clint, as a director, is very similar in many ways to the character of Robert. Honest, kind, very generous, very straightforward. He's more verbose than Robert, like, how was that? Take it. But just a good-hearted human being, and I believe Robert is that, pure, I'll shut up now.
Ashley, as we saw here, filmed on location, as mentioned, in Washington State, in the elements, 29 days, right? What was the biggest challenge from a production perspective?
Where to start? No, I mean, listen, we had babies, toddlers, animals, fire, bridges. There were all these things, but we had an incredible crew, we had an incredible department head, we had Clint, and so together, everyone here, producers, we were figuring out, how to make all of these things and how to make this epic film on an independent budget, but to make sure everything looked epic and grand. And I think when you see what, obviously what was created by everybody, and Clint and Adolfo and our, production designer, costume designer, everything is put on screen.
Marissa, any last minute pivots, major ones that you guys had to just adapt and go with it?
No.
I like
Everything needs a plan.
What were the curveballs?
Gosh, I mean, I would say that just from the very beginning, the moment we began prep, the thing that kept me up at night was just the whole fire sequence. I think because it was a massive thing, we were working in a region that had just suffered through their own forest fires, so being sensitive to that, worrying about crew and cast safety. There was just a lot of that. And I think we explored doing it on a volume stage, doing it in a warehouse. I mean, we really just ran the gamut. And then in the end, wound up shooting it in a forest with, embers and smoke and fire machines. And I think it was really the only time on the set that we had a lot of artificial light. Most of the film is shot in natural light. And I think the result of which is beautiful. But it was definitely, I would say, the biggest production challenge is figuring out how to get that right. And it just feels so alive. I think that I'm really pleased with, I think we all are really pleased with how that scene turned out.
Clint, as you and Greg were adapting and expanding the story, you kind of moved to the region, the area, right, where you were kind of filming and where he originally wrote it. Did you use the location as kind of your inspiration for how you would expand it? Did any of that kind of work its way in?
A little bit, in small ways. We went for a brief trip while we were writing, Greg and I did, and there were some things that inspired that, like seeing some of those bridges he was writing about, and really the fire towers. That was something that that came out of, directly out of that research. That was not something from the book. Claire is a character in the book, but she's very different in the book. She's not a Forest Service person, and not in a fire tower. And that was something that, seeing those fire towers all over that area, and then just thinking about that they came. There was a real the fire that happens in this book is based on, in reality, on there was a terrible season up. It was actually all over. It was up in Minnesota. It was up in the Pacific Northwest. From 21 to 23, where just fires just ravaged these areas. And then they started putting up these fire towers a few years later. And it's kind of it felt like one of those things that the cure for cancer comes 2 years after your dad dies or something, And so there were a lot of little things like that. That big fish that's hanging from the pole in the beginning of the film we went to a little museum in Bonners Ferry, Idaho, which is where where everything is set. And there's all these photos in the museum. It wasn't just like one or two. There was tons of photos of all these people posing with these like 10 and 11 foot sturgeon that they had pulled out of the rivers up there. And this was in, you know, the 20s and 30s. And it was just like these, like, it felt like photographs of an actual prehistoric creature, you know, that was now gone from the world. And so trying to put that in the film as well. So there's other things like that for sure.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. Really great touches. Well, congratulations on this. You'll all get to watch it again on Netflix 21st, right? Yeah.
It's in theaters this weekend.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for being here. And